I'm seeing or I'm sensing two challenges right now. So with people. So one challenge that I see is that scientific mind is a limited mind if this mind doesn't use intuition or goes into subjective worlds as well. And I see, on the other hand, I see a challenge for people who are not scientific at all in their approach to spirituality, and they can be foggy. So can we address both challenges, like one at a time?
They have to meet together somewhere. And this is the task of a human mind that has understood the scheme. They must work together in a cooperative way. So far, science is very proud to have solid ground, and sometimes so solid that it is a little bit, as you said, limited. And some so-called spiritual people neglected the scientific method because they think that it is much easier to reach somewhere without involving the strictness of the method. I would say it is a discipline of the mind, not to flow away and be foggy, and dare to throw away which is not clear enough for the mind. Now, in the one hand, sometimes scientific people lack a kind of openness of mind, and the other side, the so-called spiritual people, would lack this, what I call discipline of the mind. The discipline is absolutely needed to go in a further step with value, with something valid and useful, and could be applied to go further. This is the aim of spirituality. Make consciousness grow, and not to move always on the horizontal level. You see? Mind you, some scientists, understanding, they are now looking with a wider vision, and they dare to formulate hypotheses which is not considered by the majority of scientific community as scientific. But what is science? You define it and you broaden its field of action, apply the methodology in the strictness of the discipline. What will prevent you to call it scientific? Spirituality needs that to be considered, to get consideration.
Where I see a new challenge is when we use our mind and we become more and more scientific in every approach, we get stronger mind. And when the mind it's stronger, it's harder for it to let go and to open up. So what do you see? How can people with stronger minds then let go and open to the world? Let go. Yeah. How?
You see, it is the how is the biggest thing, because one cannot describe to another person how to do. But the very general scheme of the thing, meaning be serious, but take it easy. Don't. The first thing, don't take yourself seriously. Very often we can see cases like people who take themselves very seriously, but the work is not serious. You see, seriousness should be in our own way of looking, our behavior, our acting towards life. This gives seriousness. But then what is the seriousness of our view about ourselves? It is just a matter of the ego, is it? Because the ego and the lower mind has the tendency to blow up everything. Since you do something good, it is the world should pay attention to this. But if everyone forgets this, and then everyone does a bit of what one should do, then we make a better world. The world is now hampered by the sense of the ego. And it is the curse for everyone. And in fact, it is the real challenge of the human mind, the human consciousness. Because of this sense of I-ness pervades all the mind. And then the mind is limited because with that, it cannot see in the broader way, in the wider vision of everything, of itself also, and the surrounding and the world and the people to whom it is related.
I think now we touched another subject or topic, like balance. What I'm like hearing, that people and humanity should balance our minds and our intellectual abilities with our heart, not to really embrace life as it is, also use softer approach to life. Would you say that our civilization, or at the moment, the society, is too much mental? We use our minds too much, or not?
Yes, but it is evolving. It is growing. We have to give it time to grow, and we work on it to make it grow faster.
The mind?
No, the way of looking. The way of looking. Why? Because the mind has become egoistic. The mind is very egoistic, you see, because there is the tendency of the consciousness to identify itself with everything. You look at something, one part of you is identified to it. Yeah? But now, coming back to this question of yours, you have the feeling that the mind is too much growing into matter, is it? And it forgot this part of its nature, which is spiritual. Now I said it is growing because you cannot prevent evolution. Don't say that I'm optimistic. I'm just looking at things and I can never be pessimistic, okay? And I'm not optimistic neither. Now looking this, you can ask the questions. You have the impression that it is worsening. People are turning very egoistic. Life is turning very materialistic. Yes, we can explain it by theosophical teachings that we are in an epoch of time where the mind is in a period of time when it is absolutely, completely involved with matter. It is on the top of its capacity, but it is in the bottom in matter. But it is a big challenge. You see, theosophical teaching also says we evolve in our world. There are three currents or streams of evolution. I think we have tackled about it very lightly in one of our previous talk. There are three streams: spiritual, intellectual, and physical. It is not to be presented like a kind of, you see, layers of, as in a cake, cream and then another cream and another cream, not like that. Because all this is the matter of subtleties of matter, of the substance of matter. So the more it is grosser, it condenses and it is physical, up to the point that it is solid. And then subtle state will make it, I mean, in the beginning intellectual, and from the beginning it is all pure spiritual. Now our world evolves on the three levels of these three streams. Now the meeting of physical and intellectual, this meeting space, consciousness works under the mode of struggling, very much opposing. Everyone wants to have its part of the cake, struggle, and then fight, and then get the cake, part of the cake. We have the results now, in the whole world now. But now there is a kind of beginning of a new thing, meaning that in the meantime, consciousness has grown, meaning that it is moving towards the more intellectual mode. And you can see already that some people move towards cooperation, which is a big word. It is not just like in some space rooms of meeting, they would say thank you for your cooperation. Well, it is very a standardized mode of saying. But in the core of thing, it is absolutely spiritual. You see the meeting space between the intellect and the spiritual. This space, consciousness, functions under the mode of cooperation, meaning no opposition, no longer, no struggling. As I said in one of the previous interview, you have your point of view, I have mine. Let us sit together and talk and get out. And very, very, very often, if not always, we can find out that we are thinking the same, but the expression differs between the two. So, to cooperate, one has to speak. Why? Because ideas cannot, not yet, work as ideas yet. It has to be expressed into words, to speech. When we have to get to understand the ideas of the other, find out, and this is a good willingness to understand the other and not to be stuck with mine. This is an openness of the mind. Then you can see now, you see, when I say that between intellect and physical, there's a mode of struggling. You can see that it is exploiting of others, exploiting nature, opposing each other. Now, a new consciousness, I don't like the word new consciousness. Evolution has worked. So, people now were born to another mode. They take care of environment. We have talked about this once. They don't look at the others as a means for exploitation. There's a care of the others. It is growing. It is growing everywhere. Probably that it is still awkward, their method, to try to work it out. But the idea is there. The idea is that the care of the consideration for the others, all which is not me. You see, and this is the very, very powerful factor to change, meaning we change the paradigm sometime. It is no longer me only, but all of us, globally speaking.
So we might be saying that we are seeing a paradigm shift.
Yes.
And what I got from you talking now, that it's very important in which direction we put our minds to work. So maybe before or in the past was like egoistic and self-centered. Now what you are saying, that the mind and intellect is also seeing other people, and we are moving towards cooperation and also compassion. And you see this as a good trend?
Yes.
Okay. So how can we like support this trend, or how can we, use scientific way of life in spirituality, in cooperation, in the following years? What can we do? This is like I'm asking from a scientific point of my mind.
Yes.
And you can answer from the spiritual point of view or scientific point of view.
Well, both.
Okay.
Both. Have you observed that people lack pause?
Pause. Stopping.
Yes.
Okay.
They're running there, here, there, and then one thing to another without any pause in between. Really, consciousness needs pauses because it is moving too much. You see, the mind, the human mind, the mind in general, but particularly the human mind, is just consciousness in particular conditions. Important, right? The mind is not different, it is consciousness, but under particular conditions. Conditions meaning what? Limited, with specific content. The content of people's consciousness, the mind, if you can look at it, it is always self-concerning. What I'm going to do to get more, what. It is moving like that. And then the outer world, what we call the outer world, is just a projection of this. In fact, spirituality does not make the difference between the inner and the outer world. This also we have mentioned it in one of our previous interviews. Meaning that the world, the consciousness, the world is one. You can see externally because the mind is functioning externally. You can also see inwardly. This is the one word. And outer world is just a projection of consciousness and of your mind. And the mind has very, very big capacity. It can project, meaning that you can see things that are not, and you imagine things, or the mind can conceal, meaning hide. Things that are really, the mind can cover up and finish. It cannot see things that are and invent things that are not. So that when you speak with people, sometimes when they talk about things, they talk about a dream, but not reality. It is very often. How to come to give remedy to it? Everyone should pause. And next to the pause, meditation is there. Everyone is talking about meditation in the spiritual circles, but what is it? It is not to sit on the floor and then have the mind flowing elsewhere. It is not take a posture only, because the matter of meditation concerns the mind, consciousness, and the content of the mind. You pronounce a term which is very important, to let go. Can we let go everything in the content of the mind at the end of the day? Sleep with a mind which is not filled up with our trivialities, and start the day with a fresh mind. But to start with a fresh mind, one has to have the capacity to let it go the day before. To sleep completely, not blank. Consciousness is there, always full, but it does not contain your content. So the let go, very important, inwardly. But the let go inwardly will show in the visible world that you are not attached to things. It does not mean that you are not responsible. You're responsible utterly, but you are utterly free because you're not bound to things. Okay? This is the starting point of meditation. Because if one does not realize that, one can meditate the whole life without realizing whatever. Meditation is not meant to make the ego bigger. Meditation is meant to dissolve the ego and to lead consciousness, meaning the mind, towards greater realities, if not to the ultimate reality. And this is a whole science, the science of meditation. It is not imagining, it is not sitting just there and dreaming, it is not dreaming aloud what I dream to be, but see exactly what is it. What is it, which is I call I? What am I? What is the word? How to get really to this ultimate reality, to see what which is, and not what I dream of, what I think it is. You see, this is really important. One try to walk towards this, one also is realizing one's own freedom. And as we have said in one of our interviews, freedom is the first, because this is the real nature of consciousness. If one cannot be free, don't dream about this. Fundamentally we are free, but we don't know. And because of wanting for security, one put up more things, and the mind becomes restricted, limited, and it starts to be just a conditioned consciousness which is free.
Okay, But
you get does it make sense to you?
It does.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
We went quite deep now into the conversation, but we'll now conclude the conversation.
Yeah. Temporarily.
Temporarily, yeah. Until our next
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
What would be your message, for our viewers, in the context of what we talked about, science and spirituality? So, what would be your message? How to be scientific, but also open, and also how to pause? If you can summarize, like in 2 to 3 short sentences as a message.
To the two communities, I would suggest look further than the ego, because both sides, people are working to make the ego bigger. Forget about the career. Forget about what you wish or you want. Go through and go beyond the ego. Okay, first, both communities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how to pause? Look at the word. Do you know that you are eternal? You don't. Yeah? We feel that we are something which will last longer than our death. People all wish to be still there after death. The reality is that we have to leave our physical body sooner or later. Materialistic people got panicked. What am I going to be? I will vanish. Just 100 years, more or less, unfinished. And spiritual people, so-called, believe strongly that they will exist still there, and all kinds of level of existence. Okay, everyone can have the freedom of speculating. Now the fact is that physical body has to be changed. Your mind has grown. It would be absurd for intelligence of nature just to say, yeah, you have grown, but you have to leave the body and finished. What is that? It is the big West that one could speculate about. So it cannot be. So life will continue somewhere, but not in the way you wish that continue. Now, you are eternal, because this consciousness cannot vanish anyhow. It is a fact. Even in very specific condition, I would say, particular conditions of the mind, it cannot vanish. It will assimilate the knowledge, the experience, to add to some universal reservoir of knowing. And this, every big philosophies have a name for it. This is the big reservoir, and it will remain forever. Now you by nature, each one of us, you, me, our friends, we are eternal in that consciousness. If we know that we are eternal, we cannot fear death. We cannot fear to let go. Because if we say that reincarnation is taken care of as many people in the Eastern world, it is logical. If we don't believe or adopt this hypothesis, then it is all the same. We will be still there because we are consciousness, eternal. Sometime we will return. It is normal, logical, because we cannot stay there. Okay? Out of our tendencies of the past will push us towards reincarnation. But leave this chapter behind, because it is not the theme of today. So, for both communities, I would suggest forget about your ego. Move beyond it. For each community, pause. Pause. And what is the pause? Pause will lead you to meditation. But then, this I don't like the word discernment, but not discrimination. It is the English word discrimination is the same, but I prefer discernment. Discernment will teach you what kind of meditation which would not make the ego grow. Meaning that instead of making the ego grow as any kind of action, meditation, the true, the valid one, should lead you to the realization of your own eternity, your own infinity. Meaning that when you have a slightest vision of your own infinity, meaning the vision of the future, there is no fear, there is no, meaning this agitation all the time to get something, to get to somewhere, to get bigger, you see, and this is really very, very illusionary when we see it. We cannot say illusionary to some people who do not see it. We have to realize it and realize that it is just fake things.
Okay.
Yeah. So the
Very
meditation is the end of our conversation, and this has to be developed in a scientific way. Neuroscience is now working on it. Many big names are cooperating for that, to prove that by our behavior, by our thinking, we are changing the mind, and then vice versa. It is a kind of virtuous circle. We change the mind, we change the behavior, we change the behavior, we change the mind, and the contents of the mind, meaning that this is changing the paradigm.
Great.
Yeah.
So I suggest that we pause our conversations like for today here. I would really like to thank you for another very fruitful conversation and for your visit in Slovenia.
Pleasure. Yeah.
What can we say about these conversations? Observe life. Be scientific about it. Don't forget to pause in between. And don't forget to use your senses as intuition. And remember, always go for it.